Welcome to Classic Burners. On today's journey, we're going to be going down to the 1970s Boogie Down Bronx, all the way over to Pico Rivera, California. Our guest today will be Markski, also known as Freeze Rockin Markski. So hop on board and don't miss the bus. Mark, you're not originally from Los Angeles. You come from the Boogie Down Bronx. Your origins go back to like you born and raised there, right?
So yeah.
Okay, well, please tell us a little more. I mean, take us there. Tell us what it was like over there, what it was like growing up, and how you got into graffiti.
Yeah, definitely. So I grew up in the 70s. And I'm from New York. So I was born in Brooklyn, but as a 1-year-old, or almost before I was 1, we moved to the Bronx, and so I had been there in my childhood, really, I mean, I even talk about this in my book, that stepping back for a second, in terms of the global flow of, what city is the cultural center of the world, it used to be Paris. And then in the 1940s-ish, through a lot of like social dynamics, culture, art, business, jobs, infrastructure, et cetera, and flow and, and style and what have you. So New York took over as the cultural capital of the world, right? So 1940s-ish. And so that laid the groundwork for not only, writing and hip hop, but other things were happening all in that context leading up to writing and hip hop. And so that's where I'm from. I'm from the capital of, the cultural capital of the world, essentially. And so, a lot of people look at New Yorkers as, there's another one of those, big talkers or whatever. But think about it. Our baseball team is essentially the essence of baseball. You know what I'm saying? Like when you think baseball is Yankees, Mm-hmm. And so you grow up in a place like that with the kind of mindset, like, you just automatically mingling, being on this dog eat dog world, kind of a hustle and bustle. You're on that kind of a social level in terms of how you have to operate, or you get left behind. You get left behind quick.
Okay. So just bring us back though how that applied just to you, and you didn't know all that. That's looking back in hindsight.
Yes.
Take us back when you were a kid. Like how did you feel? How through your eyes being in the Bronx?
Yes. So there was severe poverty, and that's what I lived through. Broken family, surrounded by poverty, violence, all kinds of criminality in every sense. So
you would see muggings and stuff?
I would see muggings. I've experienced some of that. I've kind of vic'd a couple of people myself when we were kids. We lived the rough life. Like, it's not a movie, it's not a joke, it's not like an exaggerated story. It was ugly. It was things that people, much less children, should not see or know about. We knew about sexual abuse, we knew about violence, muggings, spilling blood. That's the atmosphere that we were really in.
So you actually grew up seeing those, like I would see pictures out here, we would see in movies and stuff, pictures of these buildings that were rubble, like essentially like a whole blocks and blocks upon blocks of rubbled buildings.
We were there. That's my frame of reference. That's my playground. That's my beginning. And so I could tell you, so my father, he passed away. He was a straight hood. He was into all kinds of criminality. He was a wanderer. That's why he left our family too, because of that lifestyle. He was always wandering. He'd have shootouts with the police. He had bullet wounds and whatever. He was into all kinds of, burglaries and all kinds of crimes. I'll just tell you that he and his brothers were semi-abandoned as children themselves. They're from Puerto Rico, but they came to New York and they were semi-abandoned. And they lived on the streets. And so my pop was the second oldest brother, if I'm not remembering that wrong. And so he would look out for his little siblings. They would be those people stealing from the fruit stand so that the kids could have breakfast. My pop's from the ghetto.
A survivor.
Bad stuff. Okay. Now, very charismatic, very creative as well. He used to paint Puerto Rican flags without permission. Outside, inside, wherever we had an apartment, we had Puerto Rican flags, and he had tagging. So I have writing from my father, and we're talking about like 60s style, 70s style, writing.
You mean like those old school, like Cornbread and Papa 184 and all that kind of stuff?
It looked like that from very, very early on. So I was born in 69. So my pop was doing it since even before that, when he was a youngster. So we're talking early 60s, maybe late 50s. But I got my father's, hand styles. So it was pre-tagging, but it was still writing.
So was he one of those guys with the vest, like the Savage Skulls type of guys?
My father was in a gang as well, so 60s gang. And so that's the culture it wasn't just a movie, it was real deal. That's where you survived. So I would have to step over people that were bloody and left for dead. I would literally getting off the train, go down the stairs, climb over the person who has their head leaking blood onto the sidewalk, and so I was on my way to elementary school. That's the life that we lived. Broken families. It was severe. It was ugly. It's tragic, and so it's also crazy, man. How hip hop, or if you just look at the individual aspects, like writing just itself. Because a lot of people do not associate writing with hip hop.
Right.
And so when you think about writing or the elements of hip hop, it's amazing how it came out of that context. Okay. And that we're going to get to probably some of my culture clash and some of my beef with, the whole world biting my culture. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
We're going to get there. But right now you're hearing a little bit about the motivation as to why I'm so guarded and why I'm so compelled in terms of feeling ownership over writing or hip hop or what have you. Because it
didn't come easy also.
It didn't come easy.
Like it was born out of the struggle and out of the need to find something to escape and to have some life and color in your life, I imagine.
Yes. And so what my personal experience was what I was just describing, and the inventors of writing and the founders of this culture and this community, they came through the same kind of severity as well. And so I knew that, and I respect that, and that means something, So we'll get at some point maybe to the part where I came to LA, but this is not like let's rewind the VCR and let's look at this guy's style and let's be that. It wasn't that.
Okay, but we're gonna go into how you came to LA, but before we go, this is just for the writers. Who was up in the Bronx that you saw with your own two eyes, and some of the people that inspired you?
Yeah, definitely. So initially we lived in the west side of the Bronx, and then we moved over to the 6th line. And I could tell you, as a small child, I was creative from 4 years old. I was already drawing, and so I was paying attention to the tags and the trains. So before I came to LA, I already knew all of these names and crews. So a major crew that had impact was United Artists. So I know that they're super popular, commercial wise now. But back when it was a street matter, I used to see their wild styles, their throw ups, their everything rolling by on the regular basis, man. And I would look for United Artists. Okay, what did they do next is what I was always paying attention to. So Scene, Mad, Dust, PJ, Sin. So all of these UA cats, they were just automatic.
So you saw some of the burners that are in Subway Art. You saw them roll.
Well, in Subway Art, so I saw all of that kind of stuff. The ones in Subway Art, not those specific burners rolling. That was more like 82,
Ones
83.
that came in other books and magazines.
Right, but everything leading up to that.
Yeah.
And everything like equivalent to that, leading up to it, top to bottoms, whole cars, every different level of writing, whether tags, throw-ups, blockbusters, pieces, wild styles, semi-wild style, all of that stuff I was seeing on a regular basis. I used to love watching scene pieces, watching PJ blockbusters or throw-ups. And so, okay, UA, that's one major crew that I saw on a regular basis. But there was Out to Bomb, OTB. I was very aware of OTB. Bantu, his tags were everywhere. He killed the insides, and I knew that as a little kid. And we're talking, 4th grade, elementary school, 70s. So Bantu, Out to Bomb, Quick, I was very familiar with his like splashy, throw-ups, like very airy, splashy throw-ups, very loose and wiggly and whatnot. Like it had a whole other flavor to it. Plus his pieces, his wild pieces and whatnot. So Quick, so RTW, so Quick is RTW. So let's see. The Wiz.
Let's dig deeper.
Yeah.
Let's go to the guys who are not recognized, but were local little heroes on your block and your general little area.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
These might be the forgotten guys,
Yeah. So there were names plastered everywhere. So every.
Was there some that stood out? That were like,
so I remember
they were pretty popular, maybe in your school or around there.
So eventually I moved to Soundview, and I remember when they painted the Key Food supermarket, they painted it dark brown at one point. And so that was like 1980 or 79. So I remember Glare. So that was the first tag that I saw, Glare, that had neon color. So it was a neon green. And so like it matched the name, Glare. I'm sure he picked that color on purpose. So there were names like Bio. So I remember those names. Now that's another well-known one. I can think through as far as like the lesser known, but like my own little crew. So in elementary school, I would go writing by myself, but I would also go with the little crew that we had. So at one point we were called the Silver Seas. So the C stands for crew, like Silver Crew. Mm-hmm. So we just called it Silver Seas. Okay. And I'm sure that came from Silver Surfer, the comic book. And so my partner, he had a bunch of names. TBC was just a name he made up. He also wrote Rom from the comic book. His name was Israel, so he wrote Realism. Okay, so he had a bunch of names. My other partner, Rich One at the time. Now we were kids, so I'm sure there was another Rich One, big time Rich One somewhere else. But as kids, my partner was Rich One. We had Ricky, and then I had a bunch of names as well. So my main name was DC1. Okay, so I wrote it DC and then asterisk 1. So yeah, man, I paid attention to writing in the bathrooms, in the subway cars, everywhere. It was just plastered and layers of it everywhere.
Okay,
it was
thank you so
unavoidable.
much. I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's go and let's talk about the move, because this was a major thing. You did not want to go. Maybe you could explain to us some of what happened, how you ended up in Pico Rivera, which is on the east side here in the East LA area, a little further out there. Let us, talk to us about that.
Sure. I'll take one step back and come back up to that. So even though I was an elementary school kid, I lived in the Bronx up until 81, at the end of 81. And I was already so in tune with our neighborhood culture. So I was very familiar with Disco King Mario coming through our block to go to the train station at Soundview.
And that's the guy they attribute to one of the pioneers.
One of the pioneers,
of hip-hop music,
of DJing, yes. Right? Yeah, and there were other dudes a little bit before him and whatnot, but he's one of the earliest prominent Boogie Down Bronx DJs. So I knew that as a kid. Apache Bongo Rock, Disco King Mario, that's him right there. That's Mario, or Mario just came through. Like, that was a regular thing we'd hear on the streets. okay, coming from Bronxdale Projects to the Soundview train station. They would come through our block when I lived on Fratelli. So I was very locked into and aware of and all of that in terms of DJing, MCing. We used to hear about Mo D, Treacherous 3, Furious 5, and we used to hear the bigger kids will walk by with their box playing a cassette, a live cassette of like the battle between this crew and that crew that happened, you know, last Saturday or whatever at Noble Park or whatever.
Wow, how exciting.
I was in the midst of this culture that had just been formulated right before my eyes, and I was aware of it. I was in tune with the creative culture, and I knew that's what I have to do, and that's who we are.
Now, let me ask you this. I know now you practice MCing. You used to B-boy when you were out here. Did you pick up on that? Were you already starting to MC and B-boy out there?
Yes, I was. So I mentioned the Silver Seas, my little partner crew writing. So also I was writing a song for all of us. And so there were like 5 of us in this rap crew that I was putting together before I all of a sudden, you know, we picked up and we moved. So I was an MC already. So the first rap record that was recorded and put on the radio was King Tim III was the rapper, King Tim III. And so he came out with the funk band and he was the MC. And so like to this day, I still remember the flow and the lyrics.
Was it playing on the air? Or
it was on. It was on the air.
In the DJs
it was
playing.
Yeah. So we're talking 70s, late 70s, and it was on the air. And I remember hearing it, but I remember that wasn't the first time I heard rap. I would hear it live outside, and so through cassettes and through people just talking. You know, it was like regular language on the street, you know, like saying hello, but we would say lime to a lemon to the lime. We would say stuff like that because we knew that was flowing from the genius MCs that pioneer MCing, that was flowing into the little kids walking around in the streets. That was just part of our culture. So I was an MC already. I was a B-boy already. I was doing floor moves in the Bronx. Now,
so you had your footwork.
I had certain limited footwork on the ground. So there was one move called a helicopter. There was another shuffle that I used to do. And so I was aware of b-boying, breaking on the floor. So DJing, I wasn't a DJ, but I knew what scratching was. And whenever I could scratch up my mother's records, I would do that on the stereo, right? And so, but I mean, I didn't DJ at a party. But I was very aware of that. But I was MCing, I was breaking on the floor, and I was writing. You know, wow. Writing was first for me. But all of those things seemed to come like almost simultaneously. But writing was definitely right there.
Okay, now you suddenly get yanked out of. You're in this fishbowl with all these other fish. You know, this aquarium of culture and life and energy, inspiration, creativity. And all of a sudden you get yanked from there. Tell us about that.
Yeah, and let me tell you how hard that was yanked, you know. So every apartment we had was off of the 4 line, off of the 6 line. You know, I was always observing and close to the subways, okay? The last apartment that we had was on the corner of Zariga and Westchester. That's where the train station is. That's where the United Artists layup was. So they were bombing the subways right at the corner. And even though I would see them come through, I didn't know that was seen, that was sin, you know, that was mad. I didn't know that because I was a kid, but I was very aware and I was looking for them. And so by the way, there was an abandoned hospital right there at the corner. And that was my playground. So it was abandoned. We'd go in it, we'd tear it up and whatnot. And then we'd see some big dudes coming in and coming through. Now, initially we thought, okay, we moved to an area that was a white area. So that's Zariga. So we moved there. We're Puerto Ricans, okay? And so when we saw the big white dudes, we would just not quite mingle so easily. And so later on, I found out that that hospital where we were throwing bricks at each other and breaking windows, those big kids that we would see go in there was United Artists. They would go inside because that was part of their hangout, and they would watch the layup. They would watch the layup to see if other writers came to their layup. And then they would go and either mingle or harass those writers. Okay? So I learned about that later. So I'm just telling you that at that corner is where, when you look at the movie Style Wars, okay, when they show
That's
scene,
the piece, that one piece where they're out there.
Yeah.
Colors.
Right. When they show scene on the first, they show him on the platform, and he walks on the tracks, okay, and then he hops down the stairs.
Yeah.
When he's hopping down the stairs, there's an LK tag right above his head. When I saw Style Wars, I'm looking at that, and I knew that was my train station when I was watching it, okay? And so they hop down the stairs. They do their production on that wall. I used to walk past that wall every day from my apartment to the YMCA where I used to hang out. The YMCA down a few blocks away on Castle Hill, that was a United Artists hangout and TMS, the Magnum Squad. So where I was hanging out, writing on the doors of the YMCA and whatever as a little kid, trying to be sneaky and do my little tag and whatever, that was UA and all those cats were hanging out right there.
Got you.
So all of a sudden, because of poverty, broken family, and we had kept moving in the Bronx, rent issues and also danger issues. And so my uncle had gone to college, and he ended up in Hollywood. And at one point he was in Pico Rivera. And so it was through that uncle that we ended up making that shift, okay? And so first we went to Puerto Rico, and we stayed there for 7 months, and my mother came out with my uncle to be with my uncle out in LA. And then once they situated, they sent for us, okay? So I came out, like, I was happy because it was like a vacation mentality.
And Puerto Rico had no graffiti, right?
Puerto Rico has zero graph. Eventually I went back there, and I did productions there. So that's another story too. So in 81, at the end of the year, I went to PR, spent some months, a whole other culture too, because it's my people. It's my arroz con gandules. It's my arroz con habichuelas. This is my people. But we're talking, I went from the concrete jungle all the way to the real jungle, And so that was a whole, cultural difference. And then from there, I was happy to come to California because I was thinking like a vacation, right? And my uncle used to tell me, oh, I saw this movie star at the supermarket. And I was like, yeah, I want to check that out too. So I came out here happy. But as soon as that happiness rubbed off and I realized this is life, the culture shock was powerful to this day still, okay? I'm going to tell you a little simple story. When I moved here, we moved into my uncle's apartment for a few weeks, and we went to go look at a place for all of us to live together. Okay, my uncle had a studio, apartment. So like I'm there for like a week or so, and then we go out house hunting or apartment hunting, and that we went in Pico Rivera. We went to the condo that I eventually ended up living at for many years. The condo has Spanish tile. It was fairly a new complex. It had 2 floors, and it had carpet all through the condo, okay? So I come from serious, deep poverty, man, and all of the infrastructure was antiquated where I lived. The hallways, the old stair rails, we're talking old stuff, 1930s, built in the 30s or whatever. And so we went as a family to check that condo. We went through, I looked at the rooms and everything. And afterwards, my mother asked me, so what do you think? And I said to her, what do you mean, what do I think? It's great, but we're not going to live there. And she said, why not? The reason I said we're not going to live there is because it was brand new carpet throughout. And we weren't those kind of people that lived in a place that had carpet or that had new, renovations or whatever. We weren't those kind of people. So
you felt it was out of your league.
It's like, yes.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't, because my uncle, he was professional at his work, and he was able to afford that, right? That's why we were looking at it. So we moved in. But let me tell you, okay, we moved in, and we didn't have furniture for years because we left all of our stuff that we had, our old furniture and whatever, we left that in New York. So when we got to Pico Rivera, I was sleeping in a sleeping bag for years. That was my furniture. Same thing with the living room and all of that. Eventually, we got this chair or that chair, and we built up. But we came from poverty, man. And so my culture and my crafts, as far as hip-hop is concerned, I brought that with me. Now, when I stopped in PR for 7 months, I would visit my brother's high school there, okay, because I was in, just before the high school. I started junior high in the Bronx. I went to junior high in PR, and I would go to my brother's school to hang out at lunchtime. And guess who was there? All the New Yorkers that had moved to PR. And what were they doing? They were doing their up-rocking, the actual rocking, like up-rocking, in their own section of the high school. So they had their whole section with New Yorkers right there.
Okay, so for if anyone that might not know, any of our viewers, the up-rocking he's talking about is a style of dance in b-boyism, in floor rocking, as opposed to floor rocking. It's the moves that you do before you actually go down and do a breakdance set, correct?
Yes. In fact, it got incorporated into b-boying, but it came from the 70s gang culture. And so you are referring to the exact thing correctly. So I went to my brother's high school, and the New Yorkers there, they had their special handshake, which I remember. And then they had their up rocking, and so all of that kind of stuff. So what was I doing? Mingling with them, and I was trading them or buying their rap records off of them, and I picked up a couple for my collection. I had a Sugar Hill and Joy Records and independent labels rap collection from the Bronx. Okay, so
it's almost like Puerto Rico had a hip hop embassy there.
Yes, yeah.
And you went to the embassy and managed to communicate with your peeps.
Well put. And then we had gandules and habichuelas at the cafeteria in school, which
and
was
here
the
the coquis, right? The little frogs.
100%.
At night.
You know it.
Okay, so now let's get back into Pico Rivera.
Yeah, so we came to Pico, culture shock.
Predominant Mexican area, right? Mexican Americans,
99,
Chicanos.
99.99%. Mm-hmm. We were the oddballs. We were the non-Mexicano, Chicano ones. And so I started eating Mexican food, which I loved from day one, and I still love. But so before I came to California, I had heard of Mexican culture. Like, I knew Speedy Gonzalez, the cartoon. I knew, I had heard of tacos. My uncle, the same uncle, he had visited Mexico, and he brought us back souvenirs. And so I was aware, like, so superficially of Mexico, right? The Love Boat, they would have episodes where they'd stop at, Acapulco or whatever, right? So that was super superficial. And so I started eating the food, being around the culture, the people there in Pico Rivera, and I loved it, right? To this day, I still love it.
Describe, though, eating, like, your first taco. That had to been something.
I didn't know which end to start with the burrito, because something in that shape that was long like that, like a cylinder long, I was used to hot dogs in New York, right? So I started eating my burrito like it was a New York hot dog, right? And then... So I got enrolled in the school, and one of the first days when I had lunch, they served tostadas. Okay, so that was foreign to me. Now I was foreign to them. They were asking me what planet I'm from. Like how did you land here from what planet, right? And so, but I saw the tostada, and that was foreign food to me, right? Because the beans, I'm like, what is that? That's beans? Beans for me is like a stew, you know, and you pour it on the rice, right? So I'm looking at the beans smashed, refried, and basically I'm thinking, man, the cook must be in trouble for messing the beans up, you know? And so the tostada's open and it's crunchy, and it's like, you're gonna make a mess when you eat it. So I asked people, what is this? How do you eat this? And they just like laughed and said like, oh, everybody knows. Well, I sat in the corner by myself, not looking at other people, and I just tried to figure this thing out. And I tell you, I had heard of tacos, so I broke the tostada in half, like to make it a taco.
A sandwich.
Yeah, like a sandwich, because I was real familiar with hero sandwiches, so I didn't know how to eat it, and I broke it, and I made a mess, and people came over and said, you're serious, you don't know what that is. And I'm like, I told you, yeah. Wow. So, and okay, in school, I would get in arguments with kids, right? Because, I mean, I was there with my Chinese mock neck, my Sergio Valentes, my burgundy Procast 69ers. You know, I had my B-boy gear before they filmed the movie Wild Style.
And it was the old New York kind of B-boy gear.
The old gear.
Not the Pumas, Adidas, Nikes, and all that.
Right.
It was before, pre that, the Keds, right?
Yes,
Pro Keds?
Yes. And so the thing is that, you know, Wild Style or Style Wars, you know, that exploded, and that's people's reference. But no, I was sporting that stuff because that's how that's how you roll in the Bronx. You know, you show your threads, and it's like, you know, you show your colors basically, right? So they knew that when I was stepping onto this subway or whatever, they knew that I was down by law. Like, I know what's going on, and you show that with how you dress. So there I am, and I'm in like my stance, and I'm in like my skeptical stance looking at the class or whatever. And so eventually, you know, I'd get into it with people, right? Because they started telling me that I don't talk right, that my accent or whatever, and that I don't talk English right, and that I don't talk Spanish right or whatever, right? So the teacher eventually had to stop the class, and we made it a classroom discussion, because it was that disruptive. Okay. Wow. And so the teacher gave up and said, okay, we're going to embrace this. Let's talk. And so basically, as a kid dealing with this culture shock, we felt like a fish out of water, right? And so I'm explaining to the class and to the teacher that I'm not the one that has the accent. You have the accent. See, English comes from Old York, is what I told them. English comes from Old York. I'm from New York. So it like crossed over to New York. And I said, now that we're in California, this is the last stop, like a subway train, you know? I said, this is the last stop for English. So we're not the ones with the accent. Use guys. So basically, like, I had those kind of confrontations, and then now we're talking about.
So now you felt like almost like you had that culture that was so dear to you. You had to defend it.
I was the defender of the culture, the New York, English, Spanish, hip hop, every aspect of hip hop. You know, I was representing. So we're talking
about
all of that.
Like, if we were to talk about it from like a national culture or a race point of view, it's like you're like the first, you know, French guy going to some country that's never seen a French or heard a French guy, or planetary, right? Like the first visitor to another culture, you know, another planet or something, right?
Yes.
You kind of had it must have felt something like that would feel.
Yes. I have heard of a couple of different exceptions where, like, through the military, some writers from New York went to San Diego or whatnot, right? Yeah. So I think some FBA cats, Cause 207 as well, from Rockin' on Cars. Also,
but at least in your area, in Pico Rivera.
Yeah, actually, so my experience from my eyes living through all of this, I was the first Puerto Rican, the first rapper, breaker, MC, writer, all of those things that they had ever seen, even the culture.
What year is this?
82.
1982.
82.
Wow.
1982. So let me give you a little context, by the way. So I give props to Soon. Okay, Soon 1. He's from the Bronx also. And he has all of his very notable accomplishments. And he gets the props that he deserves for coming to LA and for establishing writing. Okay, and so many LA styles are traceable directly to Soon. So that's the real deal, right? But let me tell you, I came from the Bronx at the same time, from the same place, and I had that same, I was a young master myself at the time. Okay, so I came over. Now the difference, and I think we're gonna talk about secrets and secretive ways versus being open about it. Now, to Soon's credit, he was bombing where people could see, and so that's what gained that whole like following, right? I was bombing. I would say I was doing my thing very, very secretive, okay, for my own personal cultural reasons, but also because Pico Rivera was except for cholo riding and whatever, it was pretty clean. I stood out like a sore thumb. When I was walking to school or walking somewhere, I would get stopped by the police because they saw me with my rainbow gear, colorful this, that, and the other, all of my different, I looked different. I stood out a lot.
Okay, let me ask you this. Well, at what point did you first start actually trying to do a tag or a piece out there?
82.
Okay, tell me about that.
Right away. So, my brother was with me. He's almost 2 years older, right? So, when he got there, because we came a little bit at different times, he came right after me. When he got there, he was walking the streets in Pico Rivera, and he started meeting some of the kids playing like, wiffle ball or whatever outside. So they came one day to our condo looking for my brother Angel, all right? And they came across me. And when I met those kids, some of them were interested in drawing, and I was right there on the floor in my piece book, doing my piece book. And then they're looking for Angel, my brother, and I'm like, and they're like, what are you doing? And I'm like, this is my piece right here. And they're like, what's a piece? And I like that. What's a piece? So then I introduced them to what writing is. And then we started writing together. And so we were putting up different funny little names. We made up little crew names, little things like that. There was this old TV show. It was an old TV show with kids that were private eyes or whatever, right? And they were called the Red Hand Gang, okay? Old, probably 70s thing. And so just for fun, since I identify with that, I made up an R with the heart and then 5 fingers around the R, okay? And so I made up this little symbol, and we were the Red Hand Gang on our own, and we would go on missions in the nighttime writing on different walls, okay?
Now, were you noticed by any of the local gangs? Pico Rivera, Pico Viejo?
Not
Rivera,
really,
any of those
not
gangs?
really just yet as far as writing was concerned. We were just doing little things here and there.
So it looked like scribbly kind of stuff a little bit.
Scribbly stuff here and there or whatever, but very secretive because I stood out so much like a sore thumb that it was easy to get busted. Whereas in New York, the whole place was plastered already. Right. So I was like getting a feel for, hey, this is a clean place, like, and my mentality wasn't to destroy.
Okay, so now let's go into the first, where you leveled up and did the first major piece or major move towards doing something that's more substantial and more, like traditional graffiti that we see now.
So in '83, I had gotten together with some partners, and there was this popping crew. And since I was attuned with the streets, I took to that right away. Since like 82, 83, I started popping very hardcore, very, very focused on popping. And
okay, for our viewers who don't know about that, that's the robot, the tuts, the wave popping. West Coast thing, as opposed to the East Coast, didn't focus so much on that. They were more like the breakdancing. folk centered. West Coast is very well known for the pop locking culture and the actual popping, waving, tutting, and that sort of thing. Okay, go on, Mark.
Yeah, so I got focused on popping, and my partners had this little crew that I joined into, and it was called the Street Dancers. So it was the Street Dancers is the name of it, and we had our vests with the script lettering. That's what was happening at the time. So we had those. We had black vests with white letters, and so and I had mine that said Freeze Rock, you know, and so with the Street Dancers, I started grabbing some of their like father's spray paint or whatever, and I started messing around doing like a Street Dancers like piece. Okay. So I did a Street Dancers piece on some panels, and then that's 83. And then in 83, one of my other partners that eventually became very involved, he brought me. We had planned a bombing mission in 83, and so he was supposed to bring the paint, and he shows up with no spray paint, but he brings his sisters. So he's the oldest brother of this big family, so he brought his sister's chalk. All right, the fat chalk. He brought a box of all the colors of the chalk, and I'm like, "Where's the spray paint?" Right? And he says, "This is all I could bring." So we went in on Rosemead Boulevard and Telegraph behind the warehouses, and we did full size pieces filled in with chalk. All right, and so that was 83.
Any pictures survive of that?
Not that. So in 84, we said, okay, wait. So we started collecting spray paint, and in 84 is when we went to another spot that became, we started the yard there. And
now this was an abandoned building, a lot.
This was in a riverbed.
Okay.
And so it was like a dam wall in the riverbed. Okay. So, you know, I don't want to give my secrets away too much, but we're talking, you know, I was in Pico Rivera. So the border between Pico and Montebello has a riverbed, dam, and all of that stuff. So we went there. My partners took me to that.
That later became like the UWS yard or whatever, right?
Two of those spots far away from each other, but in the same kind of riverbed. Two of those spots became our spots to paint among a whole bunch of other spots. So we went there, and in 84, I did a full-on piece with two of my partners. And at that time, so we're always playing with names. So the name that we put up was Take 3. And that was like, because there were three of us. My partner that came to look for my brother, that I introduced him to writing. So his name is Kuti. That's his family nickname, Kuti. And so Kuti and me, and we had met my other partner named Squeeze. Okay, so Squeeze 33. So the three of us hooked up, and we're talking now like 8th grade, I think. And we hooked up. We planned that piece. We're like, okay, we're not doing chalk, man. So, and we went and we did our piece. I have pictures of that. And from there, you know, we just kept going back to the yards.
You caught the fever.
Yeah, we had other yards too, and we took over a spot that was really there was a local gang, and it was their like underground spot out of the way, and we went there and we just started going over everything, you know, full pieces over all of their like cholo tags, and so we dominated and took over that whole yard. That was one of our main yards, but we had multiple ones in North Pico, South Pico, and surrounding areas like that. So let me go into this little moment that really like defined the whole culture shock, you know, beyond what I already described. So I mentioned, you know, I'm a street cat, so I saw they were popping, so I got deep into popping. So I go to this school dance, and we're talking like either early 83 or the end of 82, one of those. So I go to this school dance, and I had been practicing popping, right? My partners taught me a couple of moves, and then I just expanded from there, like to make it my own. So I'm at the school dance, and everybody's shy, sitting down, and I'm a Bronx kid. So I get up and I'm dancing alone, and I'm doing my poppy moves that I invented, right? And so all of a sudden, the little cholitos from the neighborhood, they took opportunity and they surrounded me and started battling me, right? And so I'm not gonna, okay, 10-1, all right, cool, let's do it. And so eventually I ran out of moves because I'm brand new popping, and so I'm doing my thing, and they thought they had me, but I had my secret weapon, right? They have no clue what's gonna hit them, and so when I ran out of moves and all these dudes are mocking me and whatever, then I start doing my floor rocking, okay, and that it was like
totally new. They had not seen before.
Brand new, never seen before, right? And so I get down and I start doing my floor moves, my helicopter, my shuffling and whatever, and then I pop up, and I'm like, what you gonna do with that?
Wow.
Right? And I popped up. So they never saw that. So their only frame of reference was Saturday Night Fever, John Travolta doing like funny moves on the floor, right? So they started, so to save face, they start mocking me, saying I'm doing John Travolta. That's not, that's disco dancing, is what they said to me, right? And I'm like, no, that's breaking, And so, then, eventually, over time, I went back to that school dance when they had it the next year. So I want to say it was the Halloween school dance. So I went back the next year just because, hey, that's how I flow. So I went back there, and guess who I saw doing my same exact moves that they were laughing at me the previous year, right?
The same
kids. And so in my mind, this is my introduction to how people are. You know what I'm saying? Biting my culture, biting my style, mocking me, and then using it. You know what I mean?
Right.
So yeah.
Okay. Yeah. His phone rang.
Pick up
okay.
3, 2, 1, action.
Okay, so that's my introduction to how people are here. They bit my culture. They mocked me for it. They stole my moves and try to represent it like, hey, they're cool, right? And not to sound corny, but eventually when the movie Karate Kid came out, I identify with a lot of what he experienced, even the school dance, because in the movie he had that school dance rumble with those cats. And so
that makes sense.
Like when I was watching the Karate Kid later on when it came out, I used to go to that arcade. It was a golf and stuff. I used to go to that arcade in 83, 84, or whatever. So that movie came out, and I'm like, that's golf and stuff. That's where I kick it, right? And then the whole thing where they were always trying to beat him up and they were opposing him and whatever. And he was from New Jersey, right? And he came to Southern Cali, right? So I really identify with the movie. I'm like, that's like my life story right
That's
there.
interesting.
Okay,
well, why don't let's move it forward a little bit to, there was a point where you really, the fruit of your work started to bear some fruit, or the planting of your seeds, so to speak, now started bearing some fruit. You built up a crew, and fast forward some years later, and this is when I start hearing about you guys, the United We Stand crew, UWS, and now this crew had DJs that were very good. I remember, the DJs. I remember B-boys that you guys used to also break dance and battle people, and as well as MCs and writers. And you guys are making quite a big impact in those areas like Pico Rivera, Downey, East LA, Montebello, Whittier, those types of areas. So tell us a little bit about the UWS era.
Yeah, so between 82 and 85, 86, I had established relationships and made friendships, right? Even despite my culture shock, right? There's some people that actually put up with me, right? And so, but they gravitated to what they saw, like my archives, and they saw what was happening. And so I either taught or inspired people or helped them in their creative stuff. And so the close partners that I had, we established those relationships between 82 and 86. So what happened was I used to bounce back to New York a lot. So in 84, I went back for a few months and I came back here. Then I went back in 85, but then I stayed living there. And I lived there through 86, and then I came back. So there was a lot of interruptions of what I was building and doing. So a lot of people might say, well, I don't remember you. Well, I went back to New York for a year, you know. So what happened was when I came back in 86, in the summertime of 86, all my boys met up with me in my condo. And, you know, we were like celebrating. I came back and they wanted to hear, they wanted to see pictures. Because I was taking pictures of subways. I was bringing back stories. And they wanted to know what was up. Because that was the source of hip hop.
And at this point, rap music was already playing on KDAY.
Yes.
So we were hearing New York, a lot of modern, and it was upgrading.
Yes.
Like, it was getting more technical. There was more now battle rap culture that developed by this point.
Yes.
Okay, so.
Yeah, so my partners met up with me, and like immediately we knew we had to just make official what we already had going for some time. And so in 86, in the summertime, we made United We Stand official. We gave it the name, and so I made the name, and we just made it official. We had our membership immediately, and then we just built from there. Eventually, we built from there. Like in high school, my partner Squeeze 33, who I mentioned earlier, so he brought to me his partner that he grew up with in his side of Pico. So he brought Earn to me, okay? And it was before he had the name Earn. He was playing with a couple of names. And he brought this young kid to me, and I was like, okay, let's go to the gym, and I'll basically check you out, like see what's up. So he had his popping, his breaking, and his graffiti. There was this talented young kid, and I was like, you know what, you could be down. So we put him down with UWS, and he became basically a mentor over time. He became a mentor in rap producing to another crew and other young kids who eventually went on and are now doing major things with a lot of major MCs and even their own music stuff. But Earn came, and other partners came and joined the crew. And
Zulu Gremlin being one of the big ones.
Eventually, Zulu Gremlin came to our high school, and the kids at the high school, they saw him and his brother, and I saw them in between classes, like from a distance. And so eventually, people came to me and said, "Hey, there's some kids. We think they're from New York," because they were all b-boyed out. And at lunchtime, basically, they brought those kids to me so that I could like see who they were coming to El Rancho High School, right? So, and I took them to the gym, and they were like, yeah, we break and whatever. I was like, okay, let's go. I have my routine. We went
battle Zulu Gremlin?
Well, not battle, but like I had him show me his floor moves.
Okay.
And I just like checked him out, talked with him. So it was him and his brother, and they were rocking like top-notch, b-boy style.
Now, mind you, for the viewers out there, Zulu Gremlin is the guy who actually was one of the founding forces for the B-Boy Summit, which was one of the things that really helped expand hip-hop worldwide. And these were events where people would come from all over to compete on a professional level. So go on.
Yeah. So Zulu Gremlin joined the crew, and what was excellent about that was he was a pro and he had his skill sets. So when he joined, that's when he started emceeing, was with me. Okay, we started writing rhymes together, and basically he would pattern, the verses off of what I had written. And so he established, his verses and whatnot. And we just soared from there, man. We did recordings at his house on a daily basis. We were just rapping, recording, performing places. So he was a top-notch, performer and talent.
So now you guys are getting really good, getting stuff out there. You catch the eyes of now rap groups started propping up around the east side. You started having Kid Frost. You started having Mello Mayonnaise, who was from Cuba and out in the Southgate area. And he was the first one and both of those were known as like pioneers in Spanglish, Spanish, English type of hip-hop rap. somehow or other they get wind of you, and you guys form this group called the Latin Alliance, which brings together all of these. Talk about that.
So basically, so I had met Tony G, and so when I say Tony G, I mean I'm talking
The famous DJ,
the legendary,
KDAY.
he's called by. So Julio G refers to him as the Cool Herc of the West Coast. Okay, and rightfully so. And I add Grandmaster Flash to that. Tony is the Grandmaster Flash as well,
very
of the West
respected.
Coast.
Very well respected.
DJ Tricks, he was a mentor, big time. Okay, and he didn't like to be in front of the camera, so he was in the background making people famous with his talent. So Tony, I had met him because I had been emceeing, okay, since 82, 83, all through Pico Rivera. Wherever there was a popping contest, I would grab the mic, a cappella or whatever, to an instrumental, and I was rapping. And that was the first time people ever saw a live rapper, okay? For some people, it was the first time they heard rap, period. For other people, it was the first time they saw an actual MC, okay? So I was doing that because it was just who I was, and it was another weapon from my weaponry, okay, from my tool set. And so, you know, I'd break against people, pop against people, and then I'd start rapping on them, okay? So Kid Frost, I met him in like 83 in the popping scene. He was popping, and he was interested in my crew, the street dancers, our crew, what we were doing. So he knew a few of the kids. And so I met him through the popping scene, and he got into rapping, and I was already experienced writing rhymes and whatnot. So he saw me performing at lots of places, and he started rapping. Okay, so he started rapping probably in 83, something like that. All right. So
Mellow Man Ace, how did you run into him?
With Frost first, we used to pass the mic to each other at house parties. So parties were jumping off in East LA, Pico Rivera, all through Whittier, all of that, every weekend, Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night, okay? So basically they had me on the party flyers everywhere wanting me to go to their things. And I would go. Then they had Zulu Gremlin on there with us, and they had Kid Frost on there, okay? And I should mention my brother too. So my brother was emceeing at places, at parties just like that, in that same circle. But my brother did it like not so much as an artist, but more like something to do, let me get over. You know what I mean? He was like, oh, I'll do this, you know? And he was like rapping and whatever. And I did it like an art form, okay? So we're rapping in those days, early 80s, mid 80s, early 80s, at parties. So I already knew Kid Frost. He connected with my brother because they were closer in age. Kid Frost is several years older. So he connected with my brother. He used to come to our condo. They used to strategize on concerts or performances that they were going to be at and stuff like that. And so he knew me. And eventually, when I gained all of my, I just built up, he wanted to rap together with me. And ultimately, he was shopping his record deal. He landed his deal with Virgin, his first album deal. And
This is for the Raza?
For the album that has La Raza. So he lands that album deal with Virgin Records with only a portion of La Raza on a demo and no other songs. So when they sign him, he comes straight to my condo because he needs lyrics, okay? And so I was at Zulu Gremlins recording our own stuff. When I got home that night, my mother said, Kid Frost was here, he's looking for you, yada, yada, yada. Okay, so my mother was down with the whole scene. And so she goes, yeah, he's looking for you. He has an album deal, so he wants to talk to you. So I wrote some lyrics for him for his first album. And it's a long story that I'll make super short. I won't even tell the story. I'll just say that it was a great opportunity, and I love Frost. I mean, he's my brother from way back, and no buts about it. I mean, he did his thing. He's still doing his thing. So I appreciate the opportunity. I had to adjust to the idea of my lyrics getting spread out in a popular or widespread way on Virgin Records, whereas I felt like I had always been 100% in control of my lyrics or my graphics or my whatever. But now it was like going out. And so I had to adjust to that idea. So I wrote him lyrics with like hesitation, like still guarding my craft. You know what I'm saying? So I wrote a few, I wrote for him. We wrote in the studio some stuff as well together.
Okay.
So we did that. Okay. Now, Mellow Man Ace. Okay. Mellow Man Ace, it was through Tony G that I connected with Mello, and that's right before Mello recorded his first album. And if you look on the back of Escape from Havana, if you look on the back of the album cover, guess who's in the background? So I'm on the back of his album cover, and he gives me special props, Markski, UWS, and some of the crew. So Mellow Man Ace was another cool cat doing his thing in the Spanglish genre, and I'll touch on that in a second. But he was doing his thing, and he had Tony G backing him and whatnot. And so he was down with UWS, like he was vibing with us, right? And so we're on his album cover. And so let me talk about this for a second. So I learned not only rap from the 70s, but when we're talking about Spanish or Spanglish rap, I heard that from Mr. Schick and Julio from the Mean Machine. They dropped their record in 1981 in New York on Sugar Hill. When they dropped that, I was in tune with anything brand new that was coming out in the rap genre. Okay, I was collecting records. So I bought the Mean Machine the moment it dropped in 81. And I was blasting it from my apartment, and I was like saying the lyrics. That's where I learned Spanish, Spanglish rap. There was another crew as well right after that, still in like late 81. So I was already a Spanglish MC. And I came to LA, and I was just doing me. And I would do Spanglish rap wherever I would go, okay? And so there is a recording of one that was in 87, and I was doing my Spanglish rap there, and it's me and Zulu Gremlin and our DJ Phase 3. So who's the first Spanglish rapper that I knew of? Well, besides Mr. Schick and this other crew, it was me, right?
Especially out here in the West Coast.
Yes. But
at least that you knew of.
That was my experience, yeah.
There could obviously be, and there probably are other guys around the same time that were, because that's the way it was back then in hip-hop. You had isolated pockets all over the county of people either coming from New York, connecting with, or others who just picked up on it quickly through movies or music videos, and started assimilating and making stuff. So I mean, I remember, a lot of stuff like that.
Like, no disrespect to any of these people at all, because Mellow Man is my partner. That's my man. He was always super cool. Sendog from Cypress Hill, likewise, that's my brother. He's super cool. Kid Frost, and lots of people, Julio, Tony G, etc. It's just, when I came across these people, they were on the verge of becoming icons. But what they were doing was, in a sense, new to most of the world or lots of people, but it wasn't new to me.
Yeah.
And so what they were doing, I was like, oh, cool. I'm deep in that. And they were like, they knew it because they had seen me.
Right.
So anyway, so Kid Frost's album, Hispanic Causing Panic, was a major success. He's another icon for rap and Spanish rap. And so because of that success, Virgin was like, yo, like, what else, right? We got to keep this going. And so Kid Frost and me, as well as Kid Frost and my crew, United We Stand, we were already performing lots of places. So he knew that I'm Puerto Rican, and some of the cats in my crew were Chicano, bilingual, and whatnot. And so we made this crew called the Latin Alliance, and that's what we did for Virgin Records. Pitching that to them is, we'll have representatives from various Latino cultures doing Spanglish rap, okay? So So that's the Latin Alliance album.
And they approached you with Mello Mayonnaise to be a part
Well,
of. He was
no,
part of that, right?
no. Since he was one of our partners,
Yeah.
it's like
Oh, okay.
organically,
I got it.
like he got pulled in, and others got eventually pulled in.
Oh, okay.
So 2 cats were pulled in to the Latin Alliance album towards the end. One of those dudes became pretty close with me, and he was at my condo one day, and he was telling me about when he first met me, when he first saw me. Because at that point, it's like, oh, cool, you're an MC, you're going to be on our album. Okay, well, cool. We're meeting him through Tony G and through the fellas, right? So, okay, cool, you could be down, that's cool. But as we became partners, one of those cats, he says, yo, back in the early 80s, we saw you at our high school dance performing. Right, this is where like it was a popping show. I took over one of the mics from the DJ, so I emceed at this high school, Rosemead High School, and this dude with his partner were in the audience, and he told me, when we saw you perform at our high school dance, we knew that that's what we wanted to do with our lives, like that's what we wanted to do. And so they started rapping back in the 80s because they had seen that performance. Now he comes back around years later, and he's part of the album we're recording.
Okay, Mark. So now we move along. Now it's 88, 89, 90s, all that sort of thing. Graffiti's, moving. LA's really banging. Things are popping. And then it seems like you leveled up, or hit the gas and went up another notch. Now, and what I mean by that is that LA, we've always had gang culture and gang graffiti, and some of them did some very big blocks. And some of the graffiti writers that were familiar with those blocks and inspired by those blocks also attempted very big pieces. But the very first, as far as I know, and this is from studying the history, being there, taking pictures, knowing what was going on at the time, the very first large, huge, supersized wild style was one that you did in Bell Gardens. Okay, talk to us about that one. And then later on at the hip hop shop, you did it again. So tell us the stories behind those briefly, please.
Yeah, so I didn't see real limits to the power that was possible through writing or these different hip hop elements. And so everything I was doing was just expanding, building deeper, heavier, hardcore. And so I was being approached to I was a freelance graffiti artist, and I was doing productions and all kinds of different things. So there was a drug rehab called Teen Challenge, and that's on the border of, I want to say, Compton and Linwood. So I rocked an entire production in their whole property, okay? Through that, this other church in Bell Gardens, they approached me and they wanted me to do a production on their wall. So they had this very large wall. And so if I'm recalling correctly, we're talking 18 feet high, I think is what it was, by multiple times that, wide. And so they wanted a production, and they had a mural on there that I was going over. They had a hand-painted artistic mural. And so, hey, man, I did a full-on production there with portraits and a theme and what have you. And I did it, so it was a church. I did a wild style piece that said eternal life, but I made it all one word. I was really doing that a lot back then, making things one word. So eternal life, it shared the L for both words. So I did this massive with Krylon, straight up, everything I've really ever done is hand painted, and so Krylon, wild style, full on, and so the funny thing is, man, one time Jim Prigoff had heard about that, and he didn't know where it was because, man, a lot of things that I ended up doing were in obscure spots, and I kind of vibed on that. I liked obscurity, and so Jim Prigoff one time asked me, "Hey, I heard about that burner. Can you take me to it? Like, where is it?" And I was like, "Well, thanks for your interest. I'll have to show you sometime." And I walked away from him, like I wasn't about, "Hey, can you put me in your book?" You know,
You preferred to be kind of anonymous, kind of in the shadows, sort of.
Yeah, I wasn't the cat like, hey, I want to be in your book. You know, like the L.A. graffiti history books don't have me. I could have been, but I was too obscure. But I kind of like that. You know what I'm saying? I'm just me. And that's has its pros and cons,
the
too.
next big piece, though, we're going to talk about, though, was more out on Front Street. As a matter of fact, it was off of Melrose when the hip-hop shop got going. It became kind of a hub for people, hip-hop and writers and everything from all over the place would come visit there. And then at some point, you painted a really big, colorful piece across from it in a lot. And it was really huge. Made a lot of impact. Talk about that and talk about now the feelings of now it being more out in, you know what I mean, more public, more people seeing it, meeting more people, all that sort of thing.
So through the streets and through Skez, who was also part of UWS, I met Hex, and eventually, as our partnership and a lot of painting was going on in our UWS yards and whatnot, eventually he established the hip hop shop, and so with Omega. And he was rocking large burners and what have you. And I pretty much just kind of like stayed obscure as much as possible. Like, okay, I'm just hanging out. But, you know, one day I did decide, you know what? I'm going to break out and boom, it's my moment to just represent. And so there was that wall space. And basically I did a 2-story high wall style burner that said Markski. And I wasn't like trying to, you know, break records or whatnot. I was just being me and expanding on what my next thing was going to be. So I rocked this really big piece, wall style piece. And because it was on Melrose, it did get a lot of play. So a lot of people remember that. A lot of people approached me about that.
Definitely a classic burner.
Thank you very much. I'm glad. And people approach me and they would say, man, that's the biggest piece ever in Los Angeles, or the biggest piece we've ever seen, period, or whatever. And I was thinking to myself, well, I did one that was like 4 times bigger than that the year before, but nobody knows about it, you know? So, you know, that's just how I rolled.
Okay, cool. So now let's talk about your book. You wrote a book. Well, no, before we get into the book, let's get into... No, okay, we're going to get into the book. Okay, so now let's talk about your book. You got this book called Graffthetics.
Yes.
Okay, just tell us about it. Give us an overview. Give us what can we expect from Graffthetics?
Okay. So since the 70s, I was so in tune with all the colors on the subways and what have you, I became a young decipherer of aesthetics in the writing world. You know, basically, I'm putting it that way. And so this love of this craft has been in me so long. And the craft itself is so profound, okay? And so, you know, I'm already way advanced in these things anyway. And so my mind is appreciating these things in a way that's beyond the normal conversation. So I'm saying, you know what? We need a proper representation of what writing is, and let's discuss writing on a top level where like Socrates, Plato's, Aristotle would sit at that table. Like let's represent like beyond.
So let's think outside the box. Let's think about this culture that we're into and what we're doing. Let's think about the aesthetics of structure. Let's think about the aesthetics of color. More like a philosophy and theory behind it. The way music has music theory behind it, right?
Absolutely. So initially, I went to college and my degree was in philosophy. So I wrote my thesis and it had to be on philosophy. So I told them, I want to put something together about a graffiti philosophy. And they said, have at it. So I wrote 20 pages on the principles of beauty and how they pertain to the graffiti world, right? All right. So from that college paper, that was in 2001 that I graduated, that I had that paper, 2000 or 01. And I just built on that every year.
On that.
Now, initially, my target was, let's dive right into the principles of aesthetics and apply it to writing, and let's have that discussion, right? And as I was writing that, I found that I needed to lay a foundation one step before that. I needed to define this thing in the first place. What are we talking about in the first place? And that's what this book is. So whether I get to the other books or not, I've outlined 6 books. This is book 1.
Wow.
Okay? Who knows if I'll get there? It doesn't matter. But book 1 is 584 pages, no pictures. Why no pictures? People are like, that's crazy, a graffiti book with no pictures. I'm like, yeah, that's how I roll. Every graffiti book relies on pictorial stuff. I'm not relying on pictures. I'm diving deeper than the pictures and using the challenge of arguments and expanded thought. I'm discussing the principles, the invisible principles that makes the thing powerful and makes it what it is in the first place. Okay? Most people just identify with pictures and then their comment is dope. And that's the conversation, right?
Like on Instagram, people
I like
put a fire or whatnot.
Right, or I like your color, or I like your style.
Right.
Okay, great, fine. There's a place for that. I wanted to really go deeper, really go higher than ever before. So I wrote 584 pages of just theory, concepts, principles, and I spelled it out. I'll tell you right quick what I did. The first chapter has a thick paragraph that defines what writing is. And then the entire rest of the book, so there's 52 chapters. The entire rest of the book takes a little phrase or a word by word, phrase by phrase of the definition, and it builds an entire chapter or section on that phrase.
Gotcha.
So it's structured in that way.
Okay, thank you. And the number 52 just rang a bell. Recently, last year, you went on a crazy 52-week run where you went every weekend dropping a full color burner. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I was working on the book and about to bring it out, and I should have put my book out long ago, but at the same time, I'm going to put a book out and I'm going to be the authority on what writing is. I need to brush up on my street cred. So I hit the streets again and I started painting on a consistent basis, challenging myself. So I did it because I think it's only right. You know what I mean? Like, why talk about it if you're not doing it? You know? So I went back and I did it, right? That's one explanation. Another explanation is I work multiple jobs and I always have my whole life. And so some of those jobs are, well, at least one of them, my full-time job, is not my passion. And so my passion is these creative things. And so I went on that tear because that's my passion, right?
There's your outlet.
And so I did that. And I'll give you the number 3. All right. So I had been approached by several crews to join their crew, right? And so eventually I was telling some crews from New York, oh, thank you very much, you know, but like I never rolled like that, like I'm part of someone else's thing. And so I kind of like bumped that, you know, kicked the can on that, right? But eventually I said, you know what, I've lived decades like this distance from people. And so I started telling people that approached me, I started telling them, okay, I'll be down with your crew. I'll put your letters up in my piece or whatever. And so, but eventually UTI approached me. Now, UTI, since its inception, we've been partners already anyway. You know, we've painted a lot together, man. There's a lot that we've done together, you and I, and then me around the UTI cats. And so UTI approached me like, yo, we should have done this a long time ago, man, made you official. So I said, okay, cool. Now, as part of that process, the one brother, N238, he's a philosopher in his own right, you know, and he's got great ideals. But he was on me like, hey, you know, we need to see you bombing, and we need to see this and that. And he's very enthusiastic like that. Now, in my mind and in my experience, I brought writing to California in my mind, right? and also I'm like, I own writing. I own hip hop. Now, don't take that as arrogant. remember, I come from New York, right? And so it's like, if you can make it there, you make it anywhere, right? So in my mind, I'm the owner of these crafts,
Like
right?
a custodian.
And so for somebody to tell me that I need to paint, nobody's ever told me I need to paint. There was nobody there to tell me that,
So
right?
you challenged your ego.
So exactly, right? So N238 was like, hey man, you know, like whatever, right? And I'm like, and I'm thinking, I work multiple jobs, but you know what? I'll take that challenge. And I was like, okay. So I went and I started painting at different yards and different spots all through LA. And when I started, I wouldn't stop. It wasn't my total intention to run like that, but I started getting.
You turned on that battle machine, so to speak.
And I went for it, yeah. And it was a great run. I could have kept going, but I do have other stuff. Like I needed to put the book out too.
Well, you know what? I'll tell you, as just a person who got to appreciate it, I remember every week I was looking forward to Mondays and stuff like that to see the next burner that you were dropping, because they were all different, they were all colorful, brother, and it was a fun thing, bro. So thank you for bringing that to us here in the culture. We're getting ready to check out. And anything that you want, you know, future plans for Markski, where you going, where you know, what's new, what's going to be coming up for Mark, what's going on with any, you know, anything that you want to link us up with, any projects, anything, your book.
Definitely. So my book is available. So my website is still being worked, but it is accessible. So it's freezerockinmarkski.com. So Rockin has no G on it and no apostrophe. It's just freezerockinmarkski.com. So there's different ways that we could do payment, so you can purchase the book. People out there, and so that's my website. So I'm in. You know, I do different rap recordings and whatnot, and I'm still doing UWS and solo stuff. And so there's another crew I've been down with from the 90s. They're called GFS. So if you look up on YouTube, GFS Forever, you're gonna see, you know, 10 of our songs or whatnot. We're putting out new music all the time. We got some music coming out right now. In fact, we did a collab with an artist called V Rose. So she's an established Christian hip hop artist. So the song is Need to Believe. And so I'm also doing a solo album project with GFS, and I'm also doing a GFS album project. So by next year, some of that's going to come out. Some of my songs are done. They'll be coming out along the way as singles already. They're being mastered right now. So GFS Forever, shout out to GFS Forever. Shout out to my ma who brought me from the Bronx to Pico Rivera. Shout out to my brother Angel, my big brother.
I know Angel.
Shout out to all the UWS crew. There's so many to name, but Zulu Gremlin, Lyrical Engineer Genius G, Earn One, also Squeeze and my partner Scooty and Deeks. And I do want to remember Grand Official, who's Grand Official. They got their own history, but they basically were a continuance of the UWS culture in Pico Rivera. I want to shout out Black 57 from UWS and other crews, my partner from Las Vegas. And so, yeah, man, I want to say to you, man, you've been a longtime partner, an important partner to me. You've been part of what has not only been like a colleague, a mutual inspiration, and all of that, a networking force as well, but you've been a friend and a brother. And man, we go back, we've done a lot of things. There's only some pictures of some of that stuff, but that's how the era was. But I thank you, man, because your enthusiasm really was beneficial to myself, my craft, my life, and even like practical life steps as well. You've been a partner there, and you know, much appreciated all the way to the end, bro.
Glad I just, you know, get
sir.
You know, the privilege of knowing you, brother. You know what I mean? I always believe that when lives cross, people's paths cross, it's for a reason, and you know, we have the option to do it for the better or for the worse. You know, thank God, you know, our lives have crossed paths. It's been for the better. Wish you the best, brother, in the future. And before I leave, I just want to, you know, throw my shout outs to the UWS crew. peeps in New York. I want to say, this story inspired me, just reminded me about, good people like Keo, X-Men. I recently crewed up, with the X-Men. Shouts out to them. Shouts out to people, the Tats crew in New York. Really good hosts. Went down to the Bronx and kicked it with them. They were awesome. So I got, even though it was much later than when you lived there, I still got a feel for some of the ground out there, some of the territory. They were out there doing a painting mural off of one of them crumbly buildings, and they were good hosts, good people, man. Nicer, Bio, BG 183 Task Crew. Shouts out to you, Dove, my homeboy that's out there in New York. Because time is our most precious resource, always remember that every minute, every second, every moment matters. So let's do our best to live a kind, compassionate, and loving life. And God willing, we'll see you in the next episode. 1.